So here we are, progress on the Mig-9 by Skarabey. Well, fit is an imaginary concept once again. Interesting way they've done the cockpit with this front half here. So I've assembled it. Seatbelt decals, in all fairness, weren't too bad. Bit tricky to fit. I shouldn't have had the seat fitted when I tried to put the decal on. I put nose weight in there and behind the cockpit, always trying to beef that up a little bit, make sure I don't have a tail sitter. So that's quite added a little bit of weight to it. Fuselage, yeah, very flashy. That needed cleaning up. Not particularly much positive location. The front splitter here, major issues. I mean, the fit of that is completely optimistic at best. I may well build this, as I do with so many of my models, with an intake cover on it. The shape of the down the inside nowhere matches what it should be, but fair dues, I'll keep that fairly dark then. I think a red intake cover on it may work okay, but actually getting the shape right, because it's far from being the nice neat circle otherwise portrayed, is another matter. So we'll see. I'm going to pop the cockpit on soon. And as you can see, there's going to be a lot of work to get this join right around here, around the edges. It overlaps. You've got the gap. Best will in the world, I'm going to end up obliterating the surface detail, and then having to do a fair bit of rescribing, which is fair enough. And around here on the nose as well, that's going to be multiple layers of filler and work. So I'm in for the fun part now of this build. Overall, yeah, I'm enjoying it. As you guys can see, as I mentioned before, it is a flashy little thing. So that along the wings, and I think there's definitely been some mold mismatch here in places. Also a little bit of a short shot here on the trailing edge of the wingtip. So still good fun. I'm not quite, in all fairness, I don't think the level of detail on this is that bad. These seams are going to need a hell of a lot of filling, sanding and reworking. Okay. Absolutely no seams on this arm. I'm probably going to fit the wings today just to see what that level of fit is like. Problem with doing that is going to make filling and sanding and rescribing in particular harder. So I'm just going to see what this fit looks like. Might be quite good. I won't have to worry. Or do it in phases. Do the fuselage and then treat the wings separately. I'll certainly put the rudder on though. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm keeping it as a nice, steady, little easy build. Okay. Well, here we are. This is progress on the Mig-9. I suppose a core issue is, and the challenge with this is, just how much filler can you cram into as small a fuselage as is humanly possible? And I think the Skarabey Mig-9 is pretty well, pushing it there. So this time I decided to use a whole load of Milliput. Tried that out. Yeah, you need to give it longer to dry, but it didn't work too badly. That was overlaid by Mr. Surfacer, and just to be doubly sure, I've gone and put a load of Revell Putty along there as well, which I'm going to let dry fully. You've got good old super glue on the wing roots and along there. So it's getting the second coat. I'm sanding everything back till I get the shape looking about right. and then it's going to be a case of referring to the drawings to see where the panel lines are and trying to give something that looks approximately right. So yeah, it is going to get, I thought, oh, I can avoid rescribing this like hell. So she's going to be in for a shed load of rescribing after this. The wing roots there, you can see that's not a gap, that's just the super glue filler. I haven't used any shims on this. There's a fair deal of weight in there, so it does balance quite well. No risk of that being a tail dragger. Fit, let's be honest with you, is fit was an imaginary concept with this, but hey, it's a Mig-9. It's going to go on the shelf, it's going to be there, and that's what it's about. It's another Mig. So just a little update. Quite happy with it, enjoying it. Going on from there. Okay, guys. So, okay, a bit more progress. I've been busy again with the Milliput because of the step and the misshape in this area. I've really built that out, allowed it to set, sanded it back, and I'm starting to get the aircraft to the shape that it needs to be. Slight thing that is bugging me now is the aircraft should have a bit more sweep back along the leading edge, more of a trapezoidal wing. It just doesn't. It's actually a crap moulding, because if you sanded back at the wing root, you throw all these panel lines out, you throw out the lines for the flying surfaces as well. So this is actually a duff. The wing shape on the kit is wrong. Probably I should have tried to sanded it back, but I think I then would have made the wing taken too much off the wingtip. So yeah, but it's still going to look like a Mig-9, so I'm reasonably happy with that. So I'm about to start on the painting. You can see here that there's also been quite a lot here on the underside as well. Symmetry is okay, so nothing is skewed off, so I'm reasonably happy with that. Dihedral is a little bit buggered in that the one side is slightly more swept upwards than the other, but I'll live with that. And the splitter is maybe not bang dead center, and with all the sanding you can actually probably see that I'm going to have to take back that side of the nose a little bit, because that is off at an angle like that. So looking down at it, it's sort of skewed like that a little bit, so that needs a bit of correction. That said, very close now to the stage I'm going to put down a base coat, and then I'm going to rescribe on that, because with a Tamiya grey base, it'll give me something I can work on. I know it's not proper primer, but it's close enough for my purposes. It'll help me to see where the flaws are, where additional work needs to be done, and then it's going to be a fairly bit of interesting rescribing and reworking. As you can see, all the surface detail on the upper fuselage, to be honest with you, mostly on the lower fuselage as well, has all been obliterated by the amount of sanding and reworking that's been done on this. But hey, that's why we build these. So, quick update before we get the airbrush out on this. Well, a bit more progress on the Mig-9. Really, we're now in the last stages. I've got it mostly painted. I've just applied some varnish. All the filling, sanding and other issues are done. Rescribed it. With the rescribing, I used pretty much throughout this build. The black base, silver, then the grey top coat, and then scribed through that. And I'm actually relatively happy with that as an approach. I think it's because so much less force is required. It's I think makes rescribing a model in its assembled stage a lot easier. If you're starting with a model that's already got raised panel lines and you sand them back or use the existing panel lines as a guideline, it's not too bad to do in the unassembled stage, particularly if it's not particularly large aircraft. In this stage, I think, and with the amount of filling and sanding that went into this model, which was a huge amount, when you consider that a lot of this area just to get the right fuselage upper shape is just filler, basically Milliput reworked, and yeah, a lot of filler on this, and as a result it's the scribing over a black base. It works. Disadvantage is because you're scribing through your paint. If you make a mistake, it's harder to correct. You're going to have to sand back, you're going to have to repaint, rework more. If you're rescribing on a plain paint, on an unpainted surface, you can sand back and have another go at it. It's a lot easier to correct. So that is the main shortcoming of this. My panel lines, particularly around the cockpit area, I know aren't correct. Simple as that. They're there more to be representative. Something else I did after I got the grey paint on, and this was more just a quick run, I used some wire wool almost as mask, and I just sprayed lightly through this. So I've applied Vallejo metal varnish that I thinned down a little bit and put some flow improver in, rather than using my usual approach of Johnson's Klear. So next stage will be to apply the decals. Now these are the kit decals. Now the issue I've got with these is, and I do not know how visible this is, that the stars are actually two parts. You've got a white background and the main red star. Now I don't know how well this can be seen, but these stars, they here we go. Oh, there you go. You can actually see it. The stars themselves have got lines. The border line is not one piece, so it's almost like the paint stencils for them created gaps. Now, fair enough. That, I think, was right to this particular period. But I don't like these two-part stars, particularly having to put white background down and then rework it. So I have another set now. I used already some of these when I was building my most recent MiG-21 build, the Yugoslav Air Force one. So it has the right kind of stars on it. So I am tempted to use these. Those are the Begmont decals, and they are great decals, and it'll still mean I'll still have from that set the decals I need to do the Yugoslav Air Force MiG-21 UM in the cube markings, that red and white check pattern, which is one of my future projects. So I'm a little bit in two minds about these. Whatever happens, when I apply the decals on, seal them up, I'm then going to go back over with the filtering on the paint, just to make sure that decals are effectively blended in properly and you've got the fairly high level of wear. The one other thing I do have with this, now that it's together, is that it doesn't sit right. And like the wheel well, the nose wheel bay is just too deep. So it means that the nose wheel sits too low. And the aircraft's attitude is wrong. It's sitting too much nose down. So I'm going to have to gingerly, without breaking the wheels off, sand them down a bit. I mean, that'll flatten the threads, the rubber as well, thankfully. But I'll sand them back just to adjust the angle at which it sits at, because it's just sitting too far nose down. But I won't put flat in on the nose wheel. That's the other thing that is bugging me, like too late for anything now, is that the leading edges should be swept back a little bit. I think about maybe 5 degrees. But if you try and sand that back, you lose so much other detail, and yeah, I'm going to be looking for another kit of this, to be honest. It's going to look like a Mig-9 on the shelf, but I've got the other A model version where they put the second cockpit on it for the a technician when they were testing out air-to-air missiles, when they used that as a test platform. But the aircraft lacks other details. This is not the last Mig-9 I'm building. There's definitely, when I find a kit, it's going to be a Mig-9 UM built. If I keep my A model kit, I may end up mixing the two if I can find a UM from a kit, and then I'll use some A model parts. But we'll see. This has just got a pile of issues. So it's being built, it's going to go on the shelf, and then every MiG from Mig-9 through to MiG-31 will be done, apart from some of the two-seaters, but they'll be in due process. Anyway, so yeah, slower than I would have liked, frustrating, oh god yes, but still the kind of project you get your teeth into. So the next stage will see us with decals going on and how we get on with that, and whether I use the Begmont decals. I mean, part of me thinking is, do I want to use a decent set of decals on this kit? And that is in the back of my mind, and I think it's only right, rather than immediately rejecting these, is to give them a go. I just struggle to see the white backgrounds on the stars. So we'll see how it goes. So here we are. The Mig-9 is done. Okay. Tried out a few new things on this. I used wire wool filters, and I also used scouring pad filters. Now, decals, these were a seriously mixed bag. The carrier film was incredibly thin on them, which meant that they just scrunched up and balled up without far too easily. The red stars and the white backings were frankly unusable. I tried quite a few, ended up taking them off, and I ended up using the Begmont decals, which went on very nicely. Where you had a larger element, like the number, and they went on, they settled beautifully. Really, it's one of the nicest, tightest fitting decals I've seen anywhere. So the bought numbers on the side, absolutely great. But that's because they had a large surface area. They seemed to have a bit more to them, so they weren't anywhere near as fragile, weak, or troublesome. To blend in the decals, I went for using the scouring pad and spraying through it, which I'm quite happy with how it works, and it worked well also on the Begmont red stars as well. So all of this is really quite happy with the way it's blended. Then also ran into something that I'm absolutely and utterly crap at doing, which is attaching the aerial lines. And I think it's one of the reasons why I do mostly modern aircraft, is I really struggle with attaching lines, aerial lines like that, and I invariably feel I make a mess of it and end up with bloody great blobs of glue on it. In this case, the hole I drilled to take the wire on the tail is just too visible. just something I've yet to be able to do neatly, and it's something I need to crack. It certainly puts me off doing World War II aircraft or biplanes. I wasn't happy how it turned out on the Tu-4, and it was the messiest part of the build. Things like that. It's just something that it's a particular bugbear of mine. This, as I say, if you don't look too close, it's not too bad, and I'm glad the aerial's there. But I need to sort of cover up a mark like that. If people got ideas and advice on it, just let us know. I probably would also help if I used a heavier fishing line. This stuff is just too fiddly to work with for me, and I've used this particular type for years. It's probably, scale-wise, it's probably not bad, but just struggle with it way too much. And it's one of those things that I don't get along with. So, overall, is this a silk purse out of a sow's ear? Maybe it is a little bit. Maybe it is a bit. Would I recommend this kit? No. It's seldom I say that, but honestly, if you can find any other Mig-9, and you see a Skarabey one, or maquette, I think the maquette 2-seater is the only one out there, so if you really need the 2-seater, buy it. If you can get one, A model, I think somebody else did one, I can't remember off the top of my head. Just don't buy the Skarabey one, or for that matter, the maquette one. Because there's just far too many issues. It's very seldom I say don't do a model. I think the only other one I said that with was with a Leoman SU7, which was truly appalling. So again, if you're willing to work at it, I think you can get a passable build out of this, and I've seen some nicely done ones. This sort of sits in the, let's weather it to hide the issues. My rescribing, major problems with that, and I know it's not true to form. It doesn't show, it isn't particularly around the cockpit, it's not what it should be. The rescribing method and technique of applying the black base, then the silver, and then the grey over that, and then scribing on that I like. Now that is something I'm going to be using more of, because it takes a lot less pressure and force than conventional scribing. Disadvantage is you have to have your aircraft painted first, which creates its own problems. But I think as a way, doing that on regular painting and then knowing I can scribe through it is useful to know. So we'll see. We'll see. It's certainly a technique worth holding on to and bearing in mind. So overall, well, it looks like a Mig-9. Yeah, I'm a bit pissed off with the rigging wire. I always do get pissed off with those. But it looks like a Mig-9. It'll sit on the shelf. It is a Mig-9. Until I build the next one. Learned a lot on this kit, and I would certainly say that. Much better now with the use of Milliput. Many more ideas now on the painting and weathering and blending techniques. So, yeah, it's done. It's there. And it's certainly been an interesting one, and I'm glad I've done it as well. So we'll wrap it up at that. I'll do a series of photos after this.